Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS NFL Sunday. Going to get to as many games as I can. I doubt I'm going to be able to get to all of them. As far as college football Saturday, I'm having a good one, man. This is a hell of a run I'm on. This makes 3 straight winning college football weeks. Top bets went 2-1. Yeah, college football, after getting off to a disaster of a start to the season, it's been treating me well. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully we roll that momentum into a winning NFL Sunday. Going to get through as many games as I can. Live show at 11 a.m. Eastern time if you want to make it for the live show, or if you want to just skip and see what my favorite bets are. Don't have time to catch the show, that's fine. Head over to KyleKirms.com. I'm posting them up there later. Let's go.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
Cards on the road in Miami. Dolphins laying 4.5 points at home. Total sitting at 46 or 46.5, depending on your sportsbook. Take a look at the pie charts, and according to this data, action's coming in pretty split. Just over 55% of the tickets on the Cards, just over 55% of the money on Miami. So according to this data, coming in pretty split. As I always say, take it with a grain of salt. So let's get into this one, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this one right now. We'll talk about it on the live show. Obviously, the lead story here is the potential return of Tua at quarterback. He's officially listed as questionable. He has practiced, I believe, 2 days in a row. So he's been practicing. Maybe Tua returns. I know the reaction to this line for most of us was, I don't care if Tua's returning. That Dolphins offense didn't exactly look right before he got hurt. I'm not laying 4.5 points with this team. And I mean, that makes perfect sense. But the thing is, when you look at this Cardinals defense, they've truly been so bad against the pass. This is one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL so far. They have seen a lot of good quarterbacks, so we can cut them a little bit of slack for that. But still, this team is 31st in yards per pass attempt allowed, 32nd in success rate per dropback, 30th in EPA, 29th in DVOA. And if we're thinking no way Tua is going to be 100%, which is a fair thought, returning from another concussion injury, that's a fair thought to say no way Tua is going to be 100%. Who's to say 70% Tua can't hang 30 points on this Cardinals defense? Keep in mind, the Dolphins offensively was like the most explosive unit in the NFL last year. Pretty sure they led the NFL in passing, especially at home in Miami. And early in the season, I mean, the Dolphins were hanging 45 points a week at this time last year in their home games at Miami. So who's to say if Tua returns even at 70%, he can't completely cook this Cardinals defense? Not to mention, Miami's playing pretty well defensively. Their offense has been so bad without Tua the last few weeks, and the defense has kept them in these games. They could have won last week against the Colts. They probably should have won. The Dolphins defense is sitting at 6th in the NFL in yards per play, 4th in success rate, 8th in EPA. Solid numbers against the pass, pretty decent numbers against the run. I mean, this defense is playing pretty well. So who's to say 70% Tua can't beat the Cardinals by a touchdown? Not to mention, I don't like to make a habit of betting on Kyler Murray after he wins. He usually follows up a win with laying an egg. So I don't know. We'll talk about this one on the live show. I got nothing right now. Next game. New York Football Jets on the road in Foxborough. Patriots catching 7 points at home. Total sitting at 41. Let's take a look at the pie charts. And according to the data, action's coming in pretty heavily on the Jets side. People are jumping at the opportunity to lay a touchdown on the road with the Jets. Over 75% of the tickets, over 85% of the money coming in on New York. I'm speechless about this. The Jets were my top bet last week against the Steelers. Obviously, we know the tragic end to that. This Patriots offense is showing signs of life. Drake May is definitely a more capable thrower than, I almost said Jameis Winston, than Jacoby Brissett. But I don't really like the matchup. Is he going to make throws on the Jets secondary? We'll talk about this one on the live show. I'm skipping this one too for now. We'll talk about it on the live show, 11 a.m. Eastern time next. Falcons on the road in Tampa. Bucks are catching 2.5 points at home. Total sitting at 45.5 or 46, depending on your sports book. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, action is coming in on the Falcons side. Over 60% of the tickets, over 65% of the money coming in on Atlanta, but take it with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the Falcons offense, which has been strong this year. 7th in yards per play, 7th in success rate. They've been pretty balanced. They've been running the ball recently. Last couple of games, the run game's been getting going. Passing attack with Kirk Cousins has been pretty good as well. I know last week was ugly. 34-14, I believe was the final score. But the thing is, the Falcons' offense wasn't that bad. They finished the game with 14 points, but it was really turnovers. They averaged 6 yards per play, 56.7% success rate. So they were moving the ball. They just 3 turnovers to 0. If you have a negative 3 turnover margin, the final score is usually going to look pretty shitty for you. But the point I'm making is they only scored 14 points, but that wasn't because the offense wasn't working. They were moving the ball. They just couldn't stop turning it over. In fact, in the last 4 games, Falcons are averaging 28.5 points per game, 6.8 yards per play is excellent, 51.6% success rate. The Falcons offensively have been consistently moving the ball. Something I will say, look at the opponents. Saints, I mean, that defense is really struggling. Bucks, who they're about to play now. Carolina, Seattle, not exactly the gauntlet in terms of defenses. And also, 3 of these 4 games were at home. In fact, the only road game out of these 4 was Carolina. So they've been doing a lot of their offensive damage at home in the dome against some bad defenses. Not trying to take credit away from them, but it is something we need to take note of. They're obviously going to be on the road for this one in Tampa. That being said, Bucks aren't really playing the best defense at home recently. This is their last 3 home games. Now, the Ravens game is definitely skewing these numbers a bit. Baltimore went off. But in their last 3 home games against Denver, Philly, and Baltimore, they're allowing 27.7 points per game, 7 yards per play, 53.3% success rate. So it's not like the Bucks have been playing lockdown defense at home. Also, the injuries to the Bucks secondary still an issue. On this graphic, Jamel Dean is still out, but also they have some injuries to their depth at corner. Tyke Smith is going to miss this game as well. He plays some nickel for them. Bryce Hall is out as well. That's another one of their corners. So Tampa Bay very thin at the cornerback position. And Kirk Cousins went off against the Bucks last time he saw him in Week 5. 42 of 58, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, a 114.8 passer rating. That was the game that went to overtime. Probably Kirk Cousins' most explosive game as a member of the Falcons. I'd say his best game was the Eagles game where he drove back and won it. I think that was on Monday Night Football. That was probably his best game with the Falcons. But in terms of just raw production, this was his biggest game with the Falcons. So based on everything we've seen so far, Falcons have been moving the ball recently. Bucks not playing the best defense at home. They still have injuries to the secondary. Kirk Cousins shredded them the last time he saw him. Based on those facts, you would think, hey, Falcons are going to go off against the Bucks again. But here's the thing. It's actually not the best matchup on paper for Kirk Cousins. This is a Todd Bowles defense, so we already know what's coming. A lot of zone coverage, a lot of cover 3, a lot of blitzing. They're 7th in blitz rate, which is actually low for Todd Bowles. I would imagine he's going to finish the season in the top 5 because he always does. As of right now, they're 7th, but we know this defense blitzes a lot. 2nd in zone frequency, 3rd in cover 3 frequency. Kirk Cousins, not particularly good against zone coverage. 13th in yards per pass attempt, 17th in passer rating. Against the blitz, 18th in yards per attempt, 20th in passer rating. Not a great matchup for Kirk Cousins. Not to mention, yes, the Falcons have been running the ball the last couple weeks against Seattle and Carolina. Now they're going on the road against a Bucks defense that, not that it's been great against the run, but they had no problems taking the run away from Atlanta the first time they saw them. The only offense Atlanta had in that game was Kirk Cousins throwing 1 billion yards. They weren't able to run the ball, really. 4.1 yards per carry, just 33.3% success rate. So when they handed the ball off, for the most part, they weren't successful running the ball against this Bucks defense. So in my opinion, there's 2 ways to look at this matchup. You decide for yourself. Either A, I don't care about the matchup. I don't care that it's a bad matchup on paper for Kirk Cousins. He shredded this secondary last time. He's going to do it again. That's option A. Not saying you're wrong. I'm more of an option B guy, which is that was an anomaly. Kirk Cousins struggles when blitzed. He's not the best against zone. That was at home in the dome. Now he's on the road. Things should regress to the mean, and Kirk Cousins should struggle against this blitz, against Todd Bowles' blitz packages. So I'm more of an option B guy. I think we're going to regress to the mean a little bit. I think Kirk Cousins struggles a bit. Now, will the Bucks be able to shut down the Falcons' run game again? Probably not. But keep in mind, a few weeks back, the Bucks had injuries to that defensive front. They're all healthy there now. Again, not saying they're going to shut down the Falcons, but wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks are a tough run defense down the stretch here. So I don't think it's a great matchup for the Falcons offense, and I kind of don't care what Kirk Cousins did to the Bucks a few weeks back. On the other side of the ball, we got the Bucks offense, and I mean, this is a little more tough to figure out with the injuries, but obviously this is a mismatch, right? The Bucks are probably a top 5 offense in the NFL this year. 5th in yards per play, 4th in success rate, 5th in EPA. They're a top 6 or 7 passing attack, looking like a top 6 or 7 rushing attack now. This is a top 5, top 6 offense in the NFL. I don't think anyone could debate that. And they're matched up against a Falcons defense that's been pretty bad. I mean, yards per play, yards per attempt, yards per carry, not bad. But look at all the advanced metrics here. Success rate, 27th, 23rd, 28th. EPA, 23rd, 25th, 25th. DVOA, 24th, 27th, 19th. So all advanced metrics indicate that this Falcons defense is not good. So on paper, the Bucs should go off offensively and have no problems moving the ball in this Falcons defense, especially at home. The problem is the injuries. Like I said, 2 star receivers out, Godwin and Evans, both going to miss this game. And normally I would say star wide receivers, especially the most overvalued position in the NFL in terms of wins and losses. I mean, people think the star wide receivers out. Oh my God, how are they going to move the ball? The truth is they're worth about a half a point. I mean, maybe they're normally not worth as much in terms of the final score of the game as people would perceive. I'll phrase it like that. That being said, this is a little bit of a unique case because those are 2 of the best players on the offense, and both of them are out. So it's a little bit of a unique case. The drop off between wide receiver 1 and 2 for the Bucs to 3 and 4 is pretty significant. So it's definitely something that we need to talk about here. That being said, I still think we can count on the Bucs moving the ball in this game. That offensive line is playing so well. They're creating space in the run game. They're giving Baker Mayfield a ton of time. The Falcons have no pass rush at all. They're 20th in pressure rate, 31st in pass rush grade, 31st in adjusted sack rate. Baker Mayfield, when given a clean pocket this year, 8.2 yards per attempt, that's 11th best in the NFL. A 112.9 passer rating, that's 7th best in the NFL. Most of Baker Mayfield's problems this year have come when he's experienced pressure. I mean, he's taking a lot of sacks. He's 35th in pressure to sack rate. Turnover-worthy play rate spikes to 5.3% when pressured. With this offensive line healthy, or for the most part healthy, against a Falcons defense that doesn't generate pressure, I mean, Baker's going to have time to throw. And based on what we've seen, part of me thinks it doesn't matter who his receivers are. If you're going to give him time, he's going to piece the Falcons up. Not to mention, it's starting to look like this Falcons run defense may be awful. I mean, in their last 5 games, they're allowing 4.7 yards per carry as a team, 130 rushing yards per game. And you might be looking at this graphic thinking, Kyle, that's not that bad. I mean, these are bad, but it's not practical joke bad. Look at the opponents. Kansas City, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. Well, the Bucs can run the ball now. Carolina, Seattle. I mean, they're not even seeing rushing attacks, and everybody is running the ball on the Falcons. Now they're going to go on the road into Tampa against a Bucs offense that seems to be running the ball on everybody they see. I mean, in the last 5 weeks, the Bucs might have the most efficient rushing attack in the NFL, as crazy as that sounds. Tampa average, I think it was 6.2 yards per carry the last time they saw the Falcons a few weeks ago. In their last 5 games, they're averaging over 153 rushing yards per game, 5.9 yards per carry as a team. So based on the way Tampa Bay's offensive line is playing, based on the way the Falcons have defended the run, they're getting run on by bad teams. Who's to say the Bucs just don't come out and hand the ball off 40 times knowing the Falcons can't do a damn thing about it? I don't know. I think the Bucs are going to be able to run the shit out of the ball in this game, which is why there's no way in hell I'm laying points on the road with the Falcons here. It's only going to be Tampa. I'm trying to get a +3. All I see right now are +2.5. You can get a +3 at -120. And if push comes to shove, if that's all I can get tomorrow morning, I might take that. But I'm going to be on the Bucs here. I think they're going to win this game. So I'm on Tampa. I haven't bet it yet. I'll let you know on the live show if I found a 3. I'm looking for a Bucs +3. That's what I want. Next game. Titans are on the road in Detroit. Lions laying 11.5 points at home. Total sitting at 40, pretty much 45 across the board. Take a look at the pie charts here. And according to the data, everyone you know, everyone you've ever met, your neighbor, your hairstylist, your mailman, everyone is betting the Lions here. 90% of the tickets, over 95% of the money coming in on Detroit. Take this data with a grain of salt, although in this particular instance, I would say that's probably accurate. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start by pointing out the fact that the Titans kind of own Detroit. Since 2005, the Detroit Lions are 0-5 straight up, 0-5 against the spread against the Titans. In fact, the Lions have not beaten the Titans at home in Detroit since 1986. Warren Moon was playing quarterback for, I believe, the Oilers in that game. That was the last time the Lions beat the Titans in Detroit. Now, they haven't played since 2020. These two teams only play once every 4 years. So this is tongue-in-cheek. It's pretty much meaningless. I just thought it was interesting enough to throw in here. So what do we think about this year's matchup? Well, we do need to point out, and I know not everyone likes this kind of stuff, but it is important to point out, this is the sandwich spot, the look-ahead spot, the letdown spot, all of those terms. This is the king of all of it. I don't know if I've ever seen one quite this extreme. You got Detroit coming off a road game in Dallas, a road game in Minnesota, two of the biggest games of the year. Then they come home to play the Titans, a non-conference AFC game against a terrible AFC team at home, immediately go on the road to Green Bay, and then on the road to Houston. So you got this meaningless home game against a shitty Titans team that pretty much has given up on the season, sandwiched between arguably the two biggest games of the season for the Packers, at Minnesota, for the Lions, at Minnesota, at Green Bay. I'm not saying let's go bet Tennessee. I'm just saying laying a big number like 11.5, definitely not what you want to see. And another thing you might not want to see if you're betting Detroit here, Tennessee's defense might be a tough matchup for the Lions. What do we know about this Lions offense? They need to run the ball. I mean, they don't need to run the ball. They could beat you in a number of ways, but this is an offense that wants to run the ball, right? Behind the best offensive line in the NFL, certainly one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Here are their offensive numbers, arguably top 3, maybe even the best offense in the NFL. They want to run the ball behind this offensive line. First in adjusted line yards, 6th in run blocking grade, 3rd in yards before contact. The Titans just so happen to have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. 4th, 6th. They've been elite against the run, and if Detroit thinks they're just going to bully this Titans defensive front, I'm not so sure about that. The Titans defensive front's 1st in adjusted line yards. Nobody's generating push against Tennessee. They're 18th in run defense grade, 9th in yards before contact. Not the greatest matchup for this Detroit offense. In their last 3 games, the Titans are allowing 3.3 yards per carry, under 87 rushing yards per game, just 27.1% success rate per rush. That's against Miami. Okay, that offense is bad. Colts, they can run the ball a little, but they're injured. That's still a good offensive line. And Buffalo, in those 3 games, just 3.3 yards per carry against the Titans. And when it comes to their defense against the pass, they had one game last week on the road in Buffalo. Josh Allen carved them up, specifically in the second half. Went off. 323 yards, 9.8 yards per attempt, 55.9% success rate per dropback, passer rating over 116. In their first 5 games, they were elite against the pass also. Against the Bears, the Jets, the Packers, the Dolphins, the Colts, just 151.2 passing yards allowed per game, 5.5 yards per pass attempt, 85.3 average passer rating. So this is a good pass defense too. Combine that with the fact that we're talking about a huge number, 11.5 points we're getting here with the Titans, and everybody on planet Earth is betting the other side. How do we not take Tennessee here? Well, I'll tell you why you should be hesitant to bet the Titans. This team may have given up for the season. First of all, Snead and Cheeto, both out. Both of their star corners that they brought in this year, both out for this game. They just traded Ernest Jones, who was probably their best linebacker. He is now gone. Tavondre Sweat is questionable. He missed practice. So as much as I would love to fade the entire planet and take the Titans here, I don't think I can actually do it. Maybe I could get behind a Titans first quarter, Titans first half. This is the ultimate flat spot for the Lions. Titans do have a tough defensive front. Maybe they come off and catch the Lions a little flat, right? Maybe going into halftime the score's 9-7 or something. Maybe they're able to catch the Lions flat and keep it close for a half. Dan Campbell beats the shit out of them in the locker room at halftime, and then the Lions come out and take care of business. You know what? We kind of saw something similar in the Buffalo game. The Titans were playing them tough for a little while, so maybe I could get behind a Titans first. You know what? Let me look up the Titans first half line right now for you. Titans first half, 7.5. Maybe. So you know what? I'll put that pick up. That's my pick for this game. Titans first half plus 7.5. Do I actually have money on it? No. Next game. We got Green Bay on the road in Jacksonville. Jags are catching 4 points at home. Total sitting at 49.5. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, action's coming in pretty heavily on the Green Bay side. Over 85% of the tickets, over 65% of the money. But as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with a quick trend. Green Bay, 5-2 in their last 7 meetings with Jacksonville, but just 1-6 against the spread. So if history repeats itself, Green Bay will win this game, but not cover. But I mean, I'm not really concerned with this. I thought it was interesting. Let's get into it, and we'll start with the Green Bay offense against Jacksonville's defense. Obviously, we know we have a mismatch here. Jordan Love and the Packers passing offense against the Jags passing defense. It pops right out at us as soon as we look at this one. Green Bay passing numbers on the year: 6th in yards per pass attempt, 16th in success rate per dropback, 6th in EPA, 4th in DVOA. Jacksonville against the pass: 30th, 26th, dead last in EPA, dead last in DVOA. Huge mismatch, and it gets even worse than that. Green Bay's been great in pass protection. 15th in pressure rate allowed, 2nd in pass blocking grade, 3rd in adjusted sack rate. Jacksonville hasn't had much of a pass rush at all. 25th in pressure rate, 19th in pass rush grade, 29th in adjusted sack rate. So Jordan Love should have plenty of time to throw from a clean pocket in this one. And when he's been given a clean pocket this year, he's been good. He's got a 110.3 passer rating when given a clean pocket. That's 8th best in the NFL. 3.7% turnover-worthy play rate isn't great, but as a whole, Jordan Love's been pretty dangerous when given a clean pocket. He should have plenty in this game. So off to a great start for Green Bay in this one, but what kind of coverage does Jacksonville run? Man coverage. In fact, a lot of it. Almost 44% man coverage frequency. That's the most in the NFL. No NFL team runs more man coverage than the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. They also run a lot of cover one. Second most cover one. Jordan Love against man coverage, not good at all this year. Against zone coverage, when we're talking about yards per pass attempt, passer rating, big time throw rate, 6th, 16th, and 7th. Against man coverage, 33rd, 29th, 23rd. Not good at all against man coverage so far this year. And how about cover one? Jacksonville runs a lot of cover one. Well, amongst 33 qualified quarterbacks, Jordan Love, 22nd, 33rd, 32nd, 24th. So he's got terrible numbers against cover one also. So yeah, he's going to have time to throw in this one. He's been terrible against man coverage. He's been terrible against cover one. I'm not saying Jacksonville's terrible pass defense is going to shut Jordan Love down, but I certainly don't love, pun intended, the matchup for Jordan Love here against coverages he's really struggled against. And honestly, I don't know if Jordan Love's going to have run support in this game. Green Bay on the season, 6th in yards per carry, 23rd in success rate per rush, 17th in EPA, 8th in rushing DVOA. Look at Jacksonville's numbers against the run this year. 7th, 3rd, 13th, 11th. They've been great against the run. And as good as the Packers' offensive line has been in pass protection, they haven't been all that elite creating space in the run game. 14th, 28th, and 4th in these three metrics. Jacksonville's defensive front in those same metrics, 10th, 11th, and 8th. Packers might not be able to run the ball on the Jags. Also, if they plan on running zone blocking schemes, which they do a lot of, 11th in frequency, they're pretty good at it too. 6th in yards per carry, 11th in success rate. That plays right into the strength of Jacksonville's run defense. 4th in yards per carry allowed, 2nd in success rate per rush against zone blocking schemes. So again, I don't know if the run's going to be there for Green Bay in this one. Now, the good news for the Packers is it looks like the two question marks on their offensive line are going to be good to go. Jenkins and Myers, they've both participated in light practice back-to-back days, so I would imagine both of these guys play. Same goes for Jaden Reed and Christian Watson. I think all of these guys are going to play. They've all been participating in practice, so that is good news, but I still don't love the matchup here for the Packers' run game on paper. They might struggle to run the ball on the road in this one. Jordan Love is going to have time to throw. He's definitely going to have a clean pocket to throw from, and that's dangerous, but he's thrown against coverages he's struggled against. I don't know how much I love the matchup for Green Bay offensively. But what about the matchup on the other side? Let's take a look at the Jags offense against the Packers defense, and we'll actually start with injury reports here because there's a lot of question marks on both sides. Good news, though, I think everyone's going to play. Here's the Packers defense here. You can see a lot of questionables. Every single person that has a questionable designation next to him has been participating in practice. So I think all 5 of these guys are going to play. And same goes for Jacksonville offensively. Cam Robinson, Gabe Davis, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, all have been participating in practice. So I think all 4 of these guys are going to play as well. So both units should be at full strength. So will Jacksonville be able to move the ball in this game? Well, the Jags passing attack has really come to life in the last few weeks. You can see it wasn't really there early in the season. In weeks 1 through 4 against Miami, Cleveland, Buffalo, Houston, just 187.8 passing yards per game. 51.4% success rate per dropback is actually good, but just 5.8 yards per pass attempt, 81.6 passer rating. Not great looking numbers there. But in the last 3 weeks, check it out. 59.3% success rate, 268, 8.9 yards per attempt, 111.1 passer rating. Trevor Lawrence starting to come to life here right around the time they went to London, which seems to always happen. Jags go to London, they come back a different team. Tell me if you've heard this story before. But honestly, we can't give all the credit to Trevor Lawrence, even though he has been playing well. Some of this credit belongs to the offensive line. In weeks 1 through 4, Jacksonville was allowing pressure on 35.8% of Trevor Lawrence's dropbacks, 22nd most in the NFL. In weeks 5 through 7, 10.2%, which is the best in the league. Specifically in weeks 5 and 7 against the Patriots and Colts, Trevor Lawrence dropped back to pass a combined 55 times. He was pressured twice. This Jacksonville offensive line is playing really well. It was really only the Bears game, and I split it up for you here. So in the last 3 games where we've seen Trevor Lawrence production spike, where he's been playing well, a lot of it came in the New England and Indianapolis games. Almost 80% completions, 10.4 yards per attempt, over a 120 passer rating. His numbers against Chicago not nearly as good. What's the difference? Well, Chicago has a pass rush. Indianapolis does not, 31st in pressure rate. New England does not, 27th in pressure rate. Chicago, 11th in pressure rate. So when Trevor Lawrence saw a pass rush, that's when we saw him struggle. Well, good news for Trevor Lawrence, Green Bay does not have much of a pass rush, just 18th in pressure rate, 24th in pass rush grade, 13th in adjusted sack rate. Not quite as bad as the Colts and Patriots, but definitely not on Chicago's level. So based on how Jacksonville's offensive line is played recently, Trevor Lawrence should have some clean pockets to throw from in this game. So how does he match up against the Packers' coverages here? Well, they run a lot of zone, a lot of cover 2. It's a pretty balanced defense. They're 9th in cover 2 frequency, 11th in zone frequency. Trevor Lawrence, much better against zone. Against man coverage, yards per attempt, passer rating, big time throw rate, 23rd, 25th, 20th. Against zone, top 10 across the board for Trevor Lawrence. So he's got better numbers against zone coverage. Against cover 2, 27th in completion percentage, not good. 26th in yards per attempt, not good. 7th in passer rating, though. 7th in big time throw rate. 1st in turnover-worthy play rate. So his numbers against cover 2, actually not bad. So this matchup for Trevor Lawrence against Green Bay's defense might actually be a good one. He should have clean pockets to throw from. He's had success throwing on zone coverage. He's had success throwing on cover 2. I think he's going to be able to throw the ball on this Green Bay defense. Now, when it comes to the Jags running the ball, this is a little bit of a toss-up. I mean, their rushing numbers are okay, slightly above average. They're 4th in yards per carry, 16th in success rate per rush, 7th in EPA, 14th in DVOA. Green Bay defensively against the run is about the exact same. 9th, 21st, 6th, 14th. So kind of a wash there. The Jags run game has been slightly above average. The Packers run defense has been slightly above average. In terms of the offensive line against the Packers defensive front, kind of a wash. 7th, 22nd, 20th for the Jags, 14th, 25th, 18th for the Packers. So whether or not Jacksonville's able to run the ball in this game, tough to say. I would imagine they'll make some plays, but Green Bay will be able to give them some problems as well. Kind of a wash as far as the run game goes. But I do like the matchup for Trevor Lawrence, which is why, I hate saying it, I got to take the +4, man. Give me the Jags. Jacksonville +4. It's an ugly one. Got to do it. Next game. Colts are on the road in Houston. Second matchup already for these two teams. Texans are now laying, wow, they're 4.5s popping up. So this number's been dropping. It was at 6, then 5.5, then 5. Still a bunch of 5s open. I am seeing a couple 4.5s, though. Total sitting at 45.5 pretty much across the board. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, as you would expect, action seems to be coming in pretty heavily on the Houston side. Over 75% of the tickets, over 75% of the money. Take it with a grain of salt, although I would imagine most people are betting the Texans in this spot. So let's get into this matchup, and despite how ugly it's been at times, this Indianapolis Colts team somehow 6-1 against the spread. I believe the most profitable team in the NFL this year are the Colts. Despite being held to 16 points last week and just 4.8 yards per play, 36.7% success rate, despite being held to 129 passing yards, 5.4 yards per attempt, a passer rating below 60, the Colts win and cover 16-10 against the Dolphins last week. And I say that spitefully because I was holding a Dolphins +3 ticket and I was sick about this one. I felt like I was robbed here. But the Colts just continue to find a way to cover the number. So can that trend continue now that they're catching points here at Houston? Well, good news for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor is back. He hasn't played since week 4, and he's definitely been missed. Freeze, the right guard, he's still out, though. He's going to miss another game. But Taylor's back, and like I said, they've definitely missed him. In weeks 1 through 4, with Jonathan Taylor in the lineup, they were averaging 133 rushing yards per game, 5.2 yards per carry. Success rate down under 39% per rush, which isn't great. But no question, much better than the production we've seen in the last 3 games without Jonathan Taylor. Just 112 rushing yards per game, 4 yards per carry, 31.1% success rate per rush. So no question, the Colts run game should see a boost here with Jonathan Taylor back on the field. And you might be thinking, well, Kyle, they're playing Houston. Who cares? The Texans are great against the run. And you wouldn't be wrong in saying that. They're not quite as good as they were last year against the run, but this is still a borderline top 10 run defense. 14th in yards per carry allowed, 6th in success rate per rush, 11th in EPA, 2nd in run defense DVOA. That being said, Texans excel at stopping gap concept blocking schemes. 4th in yards per carry allowed, 1st in success rate per rush against gap concept blocking schemes. They actually struggle a little bit against zone blocking, and you guessed it, that's what the Colts mostly run. 9th in frequency. So the type of blocking schemes Indianapolis likes to run happen to be the type that Houston struggles with defensively. Not to mention, in their last 2 home games, we saw teams running the ball on Houston. 6.1 yards per carry, 154.5 rushing yards allowed per game. That's their last 2 home games against Jacksonville and Buffalo. Now, 31.7% success rate per rush is still great, indicating that it wasn't this bad at all. But still, teams have been able to run the ball, or at least those 2 teams could in their last 2 home games. And another thing Houston seems to be struggling with this season, dual threat quarterbacks. They've seen 4 of them already this year. Drake May, Josh Allen, Caleb Williams, and Richardson back in week 1. Those 4 guys in those games against Houston, 48 rushing yards per game, 11.3 yards per carry. So Houston struggling with dual threat quarterbacks. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, most definitely a dual threat quarterback. In fact, Anthony Richardson's best game by far this season was against Houston in the opener. And keep in mind, this Texans defense, although they've played pretty well this year, they're not in good shape right now. They may be missing all 3 of their starting linebackers in this game. Christian Harris hasn't played all year. He's been hurt. Al-Shaair is out. He's been ruled out for this one. And the other one, Toto, he might not even play either. He missed a couple practices this week. He's listed as questionable. So I'm not sure if he's going to be out there either. Mario Edwards Jr. is suspended. Jimmy Ward, the safety, he's out. So this Texans defense is really banged up right now. We saw Anthony Richardson have success against the Texans earlier in the season. Colts should be able to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor back on the field. I don't like this matchup much for Houston defensively. I'm not big on this Colts offense at all, but they should be able to score some points in this game. But what about the other side? Let's talk about the Texans offense. And at first glance at these graphics, you might think, oh, the Texans can't run the ball in this game. Well, yeah, on the season, they're 13th in yards per carry, 31st in success rate per rush, 28th in EPA, 22nd in rushing DVOA. And you look at the Colts defense, 17th, 14th, 8th, and 18th. So you might think, oh, Texans can't run the ball in the Colts. Well, we know that the Texans have been able to run the ball when Joe Mixon is on the field. In the games where Joe Mixon played, I believe it was weeks 1, 6, and 7. In those 3 games, 183.7 rushing yards per game, 5.6 yards per carry, just 38.2% success rate per rush, indicating it hasn't been quite that efficient, but still, no question, way more production when Joe Mixon's on the field. In the games where Joe Mixon did not play, Houston was held to just 77.3 rushing yards per game, 3.5 yards per carry, success rate per rush under 20%, which is absolutely terrible. Now, these numbers might be slightly inflated. Houston played much better defenses in the games where Joe Mixon did not play. Minnesota, Chicago, Jacksonville strong against the run. Buffalo's not great against the run. In the games where Joe Mixon played, the Colts, the Patriots, the Packers. So they're definitely inflated. They played a lot tougher defenses without Joe Mixon. I don't think the Texans' rushing attack is very good, but Joe Mixon played in week 1 against this Colts team in Indianapolis, and they were able to run the ball. So I think Houston should be able to run the ball in this one. And this is a Colts defense that's struggling to stop the run recently. In their last 3 games, they're allowing over 153 rushing yards per game, 5.1 yards per carry. Success rate per rush is under 37%, indicating it's been a lot better than that. But still, on the road at Houston, Joe Mixon healthy. I expect Houston to be able to run the ball. Maybe not a bulldozing of the Colts defense like we saw in week 1, but I do expect the run to be there for Houston. Here's where I'm hesitant. CJ Stroud and the Texans passing attack against the Colts defense. And I can't even believe I'm saying that, but I mean, the numbers don't lie here. CJ Stroud, we thought he had it figured out in weeks 4 and 5 against Jacksonville and Buffalo. 338 passing yards per game, 8.7 yards per pass attempt, over 61% success rate per dropback, 104.3 average passer rating. We thought CJ Stroud was back, right? 2 weeks in a row. We're like, here he is. Here's the guy from last year. But then Nico Collins got hurt in the 2 games since that happened. Just 139 passing yards per game, 5.2 yards per pass attempt, 78.1 passer rating in those 2 games. Now, success rate per dropback looks great, mostly because the run game was working with Joe Mixon back and they weren't dropping back to pass a lot. A lot of short yardage situations, like a 3rd and 2, you complete a 3-yard pass. That's a successful play, even though it doesn't look good in the stats. So the success rate per dropback is good, but as far as this elite Houston Texans passing attack that we saw last year, that we saw briefly there before Nico Collins went down, I don't know if we can count on that being there at all. Not to mention, this isn't the best matchup for CJ Stroud. Colts run a lot of zone coverage, 4th in zone frequency, 4th in cover 3 frequency, 6th in cover 2 frequency. They're sitting in cover 3, cover 2 all game. CJ Stroud against zone coverage, 23rd in passer rating, 22nd in yards per attempt. CJ Stroud against cover 3, 24th and 21st. CJ Stroud against cover 2, 24th and 21st. So CJ Stroud, not the best passing numbers against zone coverage, cover 3 or cover 2. That's what the Colts are going to be sitting in all game. So how can we lay more than a field goal with Houston if we can't trust the passing attack to be there? It's basically going to be run game versus run game. Colts played them down to the wire in the opener that was with Nico Collins. Got to go with Indianapolis here. I haven't bet this one yet. It's down to 4.5 now. I see a couple 5s. It'll be Colts +5. I'll let you know on the live show if I bet it. As of right now, Colts +5 or pass. Next game. Baltimore on the road in Cleveland. Browns are catching 8.5 points at home. Total sitting at 45.5. Take a look at the pie charts, and according to this data action, as you would expect, coming in heavily on the Baltimore side, 85% of the tickets, over 70% of the money coming in on the Ravens. Take it with a grain of salt, although I'd say that's probably correct in this instance. So let's get into this one, and I think the best way to do this one would be for me to give you guys reasons to bet Cleveland, because you don't need me to tell you reasons to bet Baltimore. You can figure, I mean, you own a smartphone or the Red Zone channel. You know why you should bet Baltimore. They're the much better football team. So, I mean, real quick, in case you need some reasons, not only is Baltimore beating everybody, but they're beating up on good teams. In their last 4 games, their worst competition, DVOA-wise, was Tampa Bay at 13th. They beat 4 consecutive teams, all ranked in the top 13 of the NFL, DVOA-wise. The Browns are 31st. So this is the easiest competition Baltimore's had in some time. Also, the Baltimore Ravens have not had problems coming to Cleveland. 13-3 against the spread in their last 16 trips to Cleveland, so they don't mind coming here. They cover at a very high rate, and this is not the Cleveland Browns of last year that were 8-1 against the spread at home. This year's Cleveland Browns, 0-3 at home. So this is most definitely not the cover machine Browns at home from last year. Another reason why this is a great matchup for Baltimore, this is arguably the best run defense in the NFL. They lead the league in yards per carry allowed and success rate per rush. In case you haven't watched much Browns football this year, they don't have much of a passing attack. In fact, they have literally the worst passing attack in the NFL. 32nd, 32nd, 31st, and 32nd. This is a Cleveland team that needs to run the ball if they're going to do anything. Going to be tough against the best run defense in the NFL. Nick Chubb is back in his debut. 11 carries, 22 yards, just 2 yards per carry. And that was against Cincinnati's defense, who's been awful against the run. So there's a few quick reasons. You probably didn't need to hear any of them of why this is a good matchup for Baltimore. Now let's flip it around and let's talk about a few reasons to bet Cleveland. And I want you to keep an open mind here. First of all, the Browns run a ton of man coverage, second most in the NFL. Ton of man coverage, ton of cover one. Lamar Jackson, much more efficient thrower of the football against zone coverage. In fact, he might be the best quarterback in the NFL against zone coverage this year. First in yards per attempt, first in passer rating, sixth in big-time throw rate. Against man coverage, 11th, 20th, and 27th. So there's something. Lamar Jackson on the road against a bunch of man coverage. Next angle for Cleveland, Deshaun Watson is not playing quarterback anymore. That is a positive in case you haven't watched. I mean, he's been terrible. Arguably the worst quarterback to see the field on any team in the NFL. 36th in EPA per play, 37th in success rate. That's amongst 39 quarterbacks. He also holds on to the ball forever, almost 3 full seconds before he releases, 30th of 38 quarterbacks. Now Jameis Winston takes over, and the criticism of Jameis Winston is he turns the ball over a lot. Well, the last time we saw Jameis Winston with the Saints, he had 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He wasn't amazing, but the criticism of Jameis Winston is he always turns the ball over. He wasn't turning the ball over the last time he saw the field. The point I'm making here is Jameis Winston couldn't possibly be worse. So they can only get more production from the quarterback position because they couldn't possibly get any less. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. Another angle for Cleveland, this is an offensive line that's been terrible. They've been banged up all year. Jack Conklin finally healthy. Ethan Pochich, the center, finally healthy. Now Jedrick Wills is out, the other tackle. They have DeJuan Jones, who's a solid backup tackle. So Cleveland's offensive line can only go up from here. I'm not saying it's going to be great. I'm just saying it could only be better from here. And Baltimore, as good as that defensive front seven has been, they don't generate a lot of consistent pressure. Just 21st in pressure rate. That probably adds to the problems they're having stopping the pass. They're not generating consistent pressure. So Jameis Winston may have time to throw in this game. Also, I forgot to mention earlier about the Browns offensive line. They're getting Wyatt Teller back. He was just activated off the IR. He hasn't played since week 3. So they're getting yet another piece back. This Cleveland offensive line is healthier right now than it has been all season. So again, against the Baltimore defensive front that doesn't generate consistent pressure, Jameis Winston may have time to make some throws, and we've seen how bad this Baltimore defense has been against the pass. They've been getting carved up, that secondary. So Jameis Winston might be able to throw the ball on this Baltimore defense. Another angle for Cleveland, because you might have said, when I was talking about the Browns man coverage before, you might have said, Kyle, who cares if it's a bad matchup for Lamar Jackson? They're just going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. Fair point. Baltimore leads the NFL in yards per carry, 5th in success rate per rush, 2nd in EPA, 1st in rushing DVOA. So what's to stop Baltimore for just handing the ball off? Oh, I don't know. Maybe that Cleveland has gotten red hot against the run. In their last 2 games, they're holding opponents to just 91 rushing yards per game, 3.4 yards per carry, 30.3% success rate per rush. One of those games was against the Eagles, one of the most dynamic rushing attacks in the NFL. This is a Cleveland run defense that was struggling against the run the first 5 games, allowing 5.3 yards per carry, 143 rushing yards per game, 38.3% success rate per rush is actually pretty good. Last 2 weeks, Cleveland's defense has gotten red hot against the run. Baltimore might not be able to run the ball very fluently in this game. Another angle for the Cleveland Browns, as good as the Baltimore offensive line has been this year, and they lost a ton of production, they've exceeded all expectations. This offensive line has been great this year. For the first time this season, they may be outmatched because the Browns defensive front have better numbers across the board here against the run, pressuring the passer. I mean, this Browns defensive front is about as good as it gets in the NFL. If there's one aspect of the Cleveland Browns you can't criticize, it's their defensive front. So you got this Ravens offensive line that's been used to bullying teams all year, going on the road to Cleveland to a spiteful chip on their shoulder Browns defense on a short week. Baltimore played on Monday night, and for the first time this year, they might get bullied. That's enough for me. Let's do it. Cleveland plus 8.5. I'm going to get hated on for this one, but you know what? I got hated on for Rams plus 3. Cleveland plus 8.5. Let's lock it in next game. Philly on the road in Cincinnati. Bengals are laying 2.5 points at home. Total sitting at 47.5 across the. I actually see a 48. For the most part, at 47.5 though. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and for the most part, action seems to be coming in heavily on the Philadelphia side. 70% of the tickets, over 75% of the money. But take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and why don't we start with the fact that Philadelphia just cannot seem to handle the Cincinnati Bengals. 12 in a row. 0-12 against the spread in their last 12 matchups against the Bengals. It's been a while since the Eagles have covered the number against Cincinnati. I mean, how relevant is this? It's more just interesting. Check this out. The Eagles are 3-7-2 in their last 12 matchups against the Bengals straight up. 2 ties. They've tied twice. In fact, they've tied 2 of the last 4 meetings. The Eagles are 0-2-3 or 0-3-2 in their last 5 meetings against the Bengals. So 2 of the last 4 meetings between these 2 teams have been ties. Might be one of those weird matchups we throw a few dollars on a tie. 2 of the last 4. Maybe these teams just are bound to tie. Anyway, let's actually talk about the game. So Philadelphia finally seems to have found its passing attack again. If you look at the raw data, it's not that obvious. I mean, in weeks 1 through 4, 232.5 passing yards per game, 7.1 yards per attempt, 55.8% success rate per dropback. Those aren't bad. Just an 86.3 passer rating. If you look at the last 2 weeks, the passing yards are actually down to 189, but yards per attempt up, success rate per dropback up, passer rating way up, close to 119 in the last 2 games. Now, obviously, a big reason for that would be A.J. Brown being back. Devontae Smith was banged up. He's healthy. Dallas Goedert is actually listed as for this game, but for the most part, Jalen Hurts has all of his weapons back and healthy at his disposal here. But the real concern with this Eagles offense is Mailata, the left tackle, still out, and last week they were missing him. Last week on the road at MetLife, the Giants pressured Jalen Hurts on 52.4% of his dropbacks. He only dropped back to pass 21 times. He was sacked 4 times in the game. They could not keep Jalen Hurts protected. Now, we do have to point out that it's looking like the Giants might have one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. On the season, they're 5th in pressure rate, 8th in pass rush grade, 1st in adjusted sack rate. Cincinnati nowhere close to that, 17th, 28th, and 30th. But still, this Eagles pass protection is a concern. They're 30th in the NFL in pressure rate allowed, 13th in pass blocking grade, 29th in adjusted sack rate. And Jalen Hurts is struggling to handle it. He actually has some of the best passing numbers in the NFL when given a clean pocket. Yards per attempt close to 8.3, passer rating over 105, 4.1% big time throw rate. Look at the numbers when pressured. Serious drop off in production. So this Eagles pass protection is a problem. And although Cincinnati doesn't have the best pass rush in the world, they're going to be able to generate some pressure in this game. So that's a problem. Also, when it comes to Jalen Hurts using his legs, there may not be a defense more prepared in the NFL for a scrambling quarterback than the Cincinnati Bengals. Check this out. Since week 3, they've seen Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, and DTR. They've seen all of those 4 guys in the last 5 weeks. This team is not going to be caught off guard by a mobile quarterback. Now, how did they do against those rushing QBs? I mean, against Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson, they did a good job. Against Jones and DTR, not so much. But in terms of just getting caught off guard, this team's ready for a mobile quarterback. They've seen a lot of them this year. So I actually think Cincinnati's defense might be more equipped to handle Jalen Hurts than you might think. I mean, this Bengals defense, we're all talking about how bad it is, and it's been bad. They've seen some really elite offenses. They saw Washington, the Chiefs, and Arrowhead. They saw Baltimore. I mean, not many defenses have seen those type of offenses already in this season. Who's the best offense the Eagles have seen? I mean, they saw the Packers in Brazil. So we're pointing at the Bengals defense saying, oh, you're so terrible. They've seen some elite offenses. Who knows if the Eagles defense wouldn't have the same looking numbers if they went to Arrowhead, if they saw Baltimore, if they saw Washington. Well, they will see Washington twice. So we got to keep in mind the Bengals have seen some dangerous offenses. Now, in terms of running the ball, Cincinnati's going to struggle to stop it. I mean, their run defense isn't as bad as you think, but this is Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. They're going to come out running the ball. They're 20th in adjusted line yards, 12th in run blocking grade. Cincinnati 17th and 8th, not as bad as you think, but still, this Eagles run game has been tough. 6th in yards per carry, 8th in success rate per rush, 3rd in EPA, 3rd in DVOA. Cincinnati against the run, sure, 10th in yards per carry looks good, but 31st in success rate per rush, 30th in EPA. Now, the good news for Cincinnati's defense is they're pretty much fully healthy here. Dax Hill got hurt in the Ravens game. He's still out, but other than that, nobody on the injury report for the Bengals defense, which at this point of the season is huge. So they're coming into this one fully healthy. And also, let's give the Bengals a little bit of credit. In their last 2 games, they're playing some good defense. Granted, they played the Giants and Browns, but they held them to 10.5 points per game, 4.8 yards per play. So this Bengals defense, by no means will I ever say it's good. It just might not be nearly as bad as people are painting it out to be. Like I said before, who's to say the Eagles defense doesn't have those same exact numbers if they played that schedule? But what about the other side? We got the Bengals offense here. In the last 2 weeks, man, 19 points per game, 6.2 yards per play is still good. Just a 40.9% success rate. This was after they were on a heater. For a 3-week stretch, Cincinnati was looking like the best offense in the NFL. 35 points per game, 7 yards per play, over 52% success rate. It was looking like nobody was going to be able to stop Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense. Last 2 weeks, they've fallen flat on their face. Now, their numbers on the year, this still is looking like a top 5 passing attack on the season. 8th in yards per pass attempt, 5th in success rate, 5th in EPA, 5th in DVOA. Rushing numbers don't look great, and last week it wasn't there at all. Just 2.8 yards per carry on the road in Cleveland, 62 rushing yards in the game, 13.6% success rate per rush. Wasn't there at all. They couldn't run the ball at all on Cleveland. And you might look at Cleveland's defense and be like, oh, they're not even that great against the run. But this Browns defense, like we were just talking about, Browns defense is coming around against the run. They shut the Eagles down just a couple weeks ago. So this Browns run defense might be a lot better than you think. And if you look at the Eagles numbers against the run, it doesn't look that bad. Maybe slightly below average, 23rd, 12th, 16th, and 22nd. But honestly, what rushing attacks have the Eagles played this year? Who's the best run game the Eagles have seen? Maybe the Falcons? The Saints can't run the ball with the injuries to that offensive line. The Bucks, they can run the ball. Cleveland, Giants, Packers. I mean, the Eagles are putting up some below average run defense stats, and they haven't even seen offenses that can run the ball. So although you look at the numbers and you're like, the Bengals don't have much of a run game, I think they can run the ball on the Eagles defense. This Eagles defensive front's been getting blown off the line of scrimmage. 28th in adjusted line yards, 23rd in run defense grade, 29th in yards before contact. So I think Cincinnati's going to be able to run the ball in the game. Now, when it comes to Joe Burrow and the passing attack, I do have some concerns, though. First of all, the Eagles have played great defense against the pass in their last 2 games. Just 136.5 passing yards allowed per game, 5.4 yards per attempt, 38.1% success rate per dropback. Elite number, an average pass rating of 79.4. Elite numbers against the pass in their last 2 games. Congrats. You played the Giants and Browns, 2 of the worst passing attacks in the NFL. I don't have to read these numbers off. You could see them. They're bad. They played the Giants and Browns. They have elite passing numbers against those 2 teams. In the first 4 games of the season, Philadelphia was really struggling against the pass. 7.3 yards per attempt, 48.9% success rate per dropback, 247.5 passing yards allowed per game. So they were really struggling against the pass in the first 4 games. Then they saw the Giants and Browns, and the pass defense numbers look great. So you might look at that thinking, oh, well, now they're going into Cincinnati. Their pass defense is going to look like shit again. Well, hold on, because the reason the Eagles have been playing such good defense against the pass isn't just because they've played terrible teams. It also is because their pass rush is waking up. In the first 4 weeks of the season, they were generating pressure on just 26.2% of opponent dropbacks. That was 29th in the NFL. In their last 2 games, 45.7%. That's 3rd best in the NFL. We just mentioned how Joe Burrow had back-to-back bad games, right? Well, check this out. The pass blocking numbers for Cincinnati are slightly below average, not terrible, 17th, 21st, and 20th. This Eagles pass rush is quickly climbing up the ranks, 16th in pressure rate, 3rd in pass rush grade, 6th in adjusted sack rate, and at this rate, it's going to be much better than that a few weeks from now. So the Eagles should be able to generate pressure on Joe Burrow. Is it just a coincidence that the 2 games we saw Joe Burrow really struggle and we saw the Bengals really struggle to get the pass game going happen to be the 2 best pass rushes they've seen this year, the Giants and the Browns, who are 5th and 1st in the NFL in pressure rate? We just mentioned that in the last 2 games, the Eagles are 3rd. So this might be another defense, a 3rd defense in a row that Joe Burrow's seeing that's going to be able to put pressure on him. And he really struggled to get it going against those 2 defenses. I think the Eagles are going to be able to pressure Joe Burrow and slow down this Bengals passing attack. Check this out. In the first 5 weeks of the season, the Bengals offensive line was allowing pressure on just 26.6% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks. That was 6th best in the NFL. In the last 2 games against the Giants and Browns, 46.8%, 30th in the NFL. So now that the Bengals have seen some pass rushes, we're seeing Joe Burrow get pressured, and we're seeing that passing attack that looked unstoppable look very stoppable. The Eagles pass rush is red hot right now. I think they're going to get to him. Now, to Joe Burrow's credit, he's actually done a pretty solid job handling pressure so far this year. And you might look at the bottom of this graphic and say, what do you mean a pretty solid job? 3rd, and 8th. Those look elite. Look at the big red 30 on the bottom left, though. 23.4% pressure to sack rate. So, yeah, in terms of throwing the ball, he's not turning it over. He's making some plays. He's taking a lot of sacks when pressured. And that Eagles pass rush, like I said, is red hot. They're going to get him. I like the matchup for the Eagles pass rush. But like I said, I think Cincinnati's going to be able to run the ball in this game, just like I think Philadelphia is going to be able to run the ball in this game. And I think Cincinnati might be able to give Hurts problems. So where does that leave us? I think this is a sharp under. Everyone's expecting this game to be a shootout. It's a little bit of a low total for these 2 offenses, sitting at 47.5. I see a 48 out there. I think there's going to be a lot of running, a lot of chewing of the clock, settling for field goals. I think it's going to stay under. Give me the under 48 next game.
So I actually ran out of time. We'll go through every single game on the board on the live show, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Or if you want to just skip right to the website and see what my favorite bets are and all the bets I have open and parlay of the day and all that, just head over to KyleKirms.com and click on open bets. See you all 11 a.m. Eastern time.